We can keep doing this, or you can help me.
I don't know how you're doing it, but I guess you can control this parasite. Use it.
Just help me recognize them. I can't tell if someone's infected or not.
All right, I'll try. But you're playing with fire, kid. That thing gets control of you. It's over.
Welcome back, true believers, and all you Uncanny X-Men fans out there, as well as you spectacular Spidey fans, to another very exciting Marvel's Wolverine / Marvel's Spider-Man related video. Once again, we are having another laid-back discussion pertaining to both of these upcoming exciting Insomniac / Marvel gaming properties. But once again, I am joined by another amazing YouTuber who you should know of Podcast Now, who covers a plethora of very exciting pop culture media. And upcoming in the next coming days, we are going to see a lot of exciting stuff from DC with DC Fandom, which he is also going to be covering on his main channel, which I definitely recommend that you go follow and subscribe to him as soon as you can, because he definitely deserves all your support. What's happening, Alex? How you doing today?
Thank you so much for having me, buddy. It's awesome to be here, and we're gonna have a lot of fun.
Couldn't say it better myself, dude, because today is very interesting due to the fact that we're taking a bit more of a deeper look at Marvel's Wolverine instead of Marvel's Spider-Man 2, which of course are the massive AAA Marvel gaming properties coming from Insomniac Games. And while we do know a lot of information about Marvel's Spider-Man 2 as of right now, there is a lot more of exciting potential, in my opinion, when it does come to Wolverine receiving his, I would say, first major AAA game. Even though in the past we have received other interesting X-Men / Wolverine related titles, the one that comes to mind to a lot of people is the movie tie-in game of X-Men Origins Wolverine. But thinking of what Insomniac was able to do in the past with Marvel's Spider-Man on PS4 and Marvel's Spider-Man Miles Morales, as well as their other incredible titles like Ratchet & Clank and the entire Resistance franchise, as well as a very underrated title of Sunset Overdrive, in my opinion, they have a lot of pedigree when it comes to their history of games, and seeing how they can apply all of that into Wolverine is something that I find truly interesting, especially knowing the fact that the main creative team behind Marvel's Wolverine is the same group of individuals who worked on Marvel's Spider-Man Miles Morales instead of Spider-Man PS4. And in my opinion, even though I prefer Spider-Man PS4 simply because of the incredible story that was told in that game, I do think it is fairly safe to say that the gameplay structure of Miles Morales is the more refined experience. The swinging feels smoother, the combat is a bit more polished, and just the overall mechanics of traversing throughout New York City feel incredible in that game, as well as Spider-Man PS4, but in my opinion, are slightly better in Miles Morales in comparison to what Insomniac have done in the past. So for you, Alex, based on all that information, what do you think Insomniac can truly learn from their previous gaming experiences, but also in the realm of Marvel with Spider-Man PS4 and Miles Morales, and how they can apply that into a character and overall gaming experience like what we're going to see with Marvel's Wolverine?
For sure. I think, well, and you mentioned one of my favorite game franchises of all time in Resistance. I don't know if it's even a thing people think of when they think of, could they handle a darker toned game? It's never been a question that's come to my head, but maybe it's come to others. And mainly the reason I've never thought of it is because of Resistance. I think they nailed a dark, very gritty, good guys consistently lose better than a lot of other games. So I have zero to worry about in terms of being gritty, being more grounded, but also just being flat out dark. And then, like you said, I mean, Miles, I think, in terms of the gameplay structure, is just better. They did a lot with those side missions, too, where they aren't so repetitive, they aren't so in your face. So I think what we've learned already, and I'm sure Spider-Man 2 will prove this as well, is they listen and they learn. And so we already know that Miles, that team, takes from, what they've done well in the past other teams and improves upon it. So I would imagine just the idea that it's like, well, do these guys listen to themselves? Do they listen to us? Do they improve upon things they do? Or they, do they just do the status quo? No, they openly try to improve some things. I honestly have a wide open slate for what I care to see about it. I don't mind if it wants to be a more linear, almost if they want to go like a Logan and then you try and make it like a Last of Us or an Uncharted kind of thing. Like if that's what they want to do and you want to make it semi-linear, I have no problem. If you wanted to make it open world, almost like a prototype, probably, right? I know you and I are both pretty big fans of that game. Go for it. I think they know how to do combat. There's really nothing to worry about. I think even if it's somewhat similar to Spider-Man, I wouldn't blame them for trying it when you have a system that, spawned off of Arkham and went into, Shadow of Mordor and Shadow of War with WB. I mean, it's a combat system that works, and Spider-Man, it wouldn't be around if it wasn't for games like Arkham. So I would expect it to kind of continue and maybe swap in its own kind of unique way, kind of be close to it for Wolverine. So yeah, I have immense respect and trust, not necessarily in Marvel. You and I talked about it off air. I don't really care about Marvel. I think they were making bad decisions off, the gaming. But in terms of picking who to, make these games, Insomniac is a gem. They're probably the best Sony first-party studio, maybe one of the better studios in the world. So I really, they've never let me down personally, besides not making Resistance 4, and so I think they're going to nail it.
And what I think the most interesting thing about this game is knowing that we're dealing with a character as brutal as Wolverine is actually the rating. Now, even though it hasn't been officially confirmed whether or not this game is rated T or M or even, hell, E for everyone, we don't know officially what it is yet, it's likely the case that based on what people have discovered on the PlayStation blog website, if you go to watch the Wolverine trailer, it does ask you for your age and make sure they are over 18 years old, whereas for Marvel Spider-Man 2, that was not the case, and for both Spider-Man PS4 and Miles Morales, those are rated T for teen, but Wolverine, it looks like that it may end up being rated M, which already is a massive differentiation from Spider-Man PS4 and Miles Morales, where even though the story did get pretty dark at times, or at least dark enough to portray some really serious character moments, like the relationship that was kind of disdained from Peter and Otto kind of having that falling out, and even Miles and Finn, the Tinkerer, also realizing that they have to face against one another. Those are some really serious moments in that game, as well as the darker tone that's already been confirmed to be included in Marvel Spider-Man 2, but all of that is in a T setting. And now having Wolverine possibly have the benefit of going full on M truly gets me super excited for what the storytelling of this game could be, but also in terms of the gameplay. You mentioned Prototype, hands down, easily one of my favorite game franchises out there. Rest in peace, Radical Entertainment. They are geniuses, legends, and I love their Incredible Hulk Ultimate Destruction game. But applying that logic, like a Prototype hard M-rated game, and the brutality and the severity of the combat into a character like Wolverine, same thing with what we saw in the X-Men Origins Wolverine movie tie-in game. He could dismember people, use his claws, and just shred people's faces off. Like, it was a super intense game. And even like the Deadpool game from High Moon Studios also included that type of gore and brutality for Wade Wilson. Even though it was more of a goofy game, it still had the intense characteristics of what you would expect from Deadpool as a fighter, and I definitely think that having that for Wolverine would also be a huge plus for the game's outcome, especially in terms of the combat. Now, Spider-Man is much more visceral and fluid in comparison to Logan. I think that's a safe comparison to make, where obviously in the Insomniac games, he can fight on the ground, he can go up into the air, use his webs, different gadgets, since Peter is a relatively smart guy, and same thing with Miles, and he's much more acrobatic and graceful when he's fighting. Logan is savage, like not just in terms of personality, but also in the way that he fights. He's much more grounded, rustic, and not really as graceful with the way that he obviously flails his claws at people. He just does what he does to get the job done. And in terms, I think we could possibly see like a mixture of the grounded combat like in the Uncharted and Last of Us games, much more realistic. I don't think we maybe end up seeing any like aerial combos. I could be wrong, but I feel like having Logan on the ground, just using his claws to his max potential and really getting down and dirty with all the enemies he's fighting, plus some really intense fluid style of combos like in the Arkham games, like Batman using his cape to stun people and just doing like intense beatdowns and just, doing combo breakers on everybody pretty much and counterattacks. I could see them build off of the Spider-Man combat system, but apply it more realistically to a character like Logan and all of his abilities that mainly come just from his claws, because Spider-Man has different methods of fighting people. He can use his environment, he can use his webs, his main kicks and punches, but Wolverine mainly only has his claws. You don't see him doing like capoeira, lucha libre, suplex moves on anybody, but he does have really, really brutal tactics when it does come to taking out enemies in a direct way, more head-on, not really dodging or avoiding the guns. He'll probably just take gunshots at point-blank range and then just heal from them immediately if he's in, like, a huge room filled with guys with guns. So it's really going to be cool to see how that combat is, I would say, one of the forefronts of this game. We don't know if it's open world or linear structured yet. However, I have said on Twitter previously that I could see them going either way and make it work, either open world or linear. But in my opinion, I pretty much just want, like, Uncharted meets Wolverine. Like, have him go into different areas of the Marvel Universe, like Madripoor, Japan, to do that Wolverine story where he is in Japan, maybe even the United States, go back to New York and meet up with the X-Men at some point for a post-credit scene. We have no idea, but I think allowing Wolverine to explore the different regions of the Marvel Universe in a linear-based story that really focuses more on Logan's character on a personal level, with really intense, like, grounded, I would say, God of War PS4 / Last of Us / possibly Batman Arkham combat into a character like Wolverine would, in my opinion, make this game of the year of whenever it releases, 2024, maybe 2025. Having all those features blend together seamlessly is going to make for one hell of a game.
No, 100%. I mean, you talking about it, like, it gets me, like, I'm picturing, as you're saying things, everything happening in front of me, and it is a Game of the Year contender at the very least. No, I agree. When you said that he would just take the shots, I was thinking the exact same thing. The way Wolverine is, I could very easily imagine, again, more like a Uncharted / Last of Us, and not even, well, you could go to combat, but yeah, I'm even just thinking the way they get hit. You know, Nate takes a lot of punches. Joel gets hit. You can get things thrown at you. Like, these are things that happen. And Wolverine, same thing. Like, I could easily see you getting punched. You know, them trying to break bones, obviously being unsuccessful, but, you know, them just hurting you and you just kind of taking it. And then you to them would be more of like a mix of Prototype in terms of dismemberment and blood and all that stuff, along with a more grounded thing like God of War, maybe when he's fighting more of the bosses, or an Uncharted Last of Us where he's just, you know, ripping them up. I could easily, I honestly think that would be the perfect blend of fighting, where you could even use the Spider-Man, you know, and again, I think it's tough, but because of the team and because of what they've done, I'm going to go in expecting it to be closer to like if people want like a complete shift, maybe even like a God of War, how God of War was the way it was, and then it changed for 2018 for the gameplay. I'd really imagine it's close to the same as how Spider-Man fights, but like you said, it'd be more grounded. It would be, he'd make mistakes, like he'd maybe be more like pouncing on people and beating them up on the ground or like slicing them. It'd be more like that versus, like you said, like combos and, you know, swinging into people and all that stuff. Like it just would be flat out, it would be different in that way, but it would still use the same system. But then, you know, like we've been saying, you bring in a little Uncharted, Last of Us, Prototype if you want to. I can't imagine they don't think of these games, the Sony games, because they are part of Sony and they all borrow from each other. That's just how it works. And then, you know, you look at a game like Prototype because it just makes sense to do that. So yeah, from gameplay, and gameplay I think is king with a lot of it. I think Spider-Man had a story that I think ranges, you know, like you've said, you know, you really love it, and I like it quite a bit. I think it ranges in definitely the good territory, you know what I mean? And it holds it together. I think the gameplay just being flat out fun to play. That's probably the number one reason I think Spider-Man was successful. You could argue it, but, you know, that's a huge thing. So the gameplay being just there, and we know it's going to be outrageously good, kind of no matter how they do it for Wolverine, is immediately good. And then, like you said, go ahead. If you want to do open world, go ahead. If you want to do a little bit more linear, if you want to do Uncharted, Uncharted 4 specifically, where you can explore a little bit, I mean, the options are pretty open. And again, I really, probably more than any Naughty Dog, or any Naughty Dog on purpose, because Naughty Dog's lost my faith, but maybe more than any Sony team besides like Sucker Punch. Insomniac's got my trust probably right up there with them. So I'm not saying this game's going to be perfect. I'm not saying I will never criticize it, because I'll be the first one to criticize it, but I have a lot of faith in them.
And the biggest factor when you mention Sony, which I find the most interesting about this experience, is not only is this a AAA Wolverine game made by Insomniac, who already has a huge amount of talent underneath their belt in terms of the developer studio there, but the fact that this game in particular, alongside of Marvel's Spider-Man 2, is not just a PlayStation exclusive, a PlayStation 5 exclusive, which is insane. I feel so bad for the Xbox and Nintendo Switch owners out there, but Wolverine getting that treatment on a complete next-gen platform is a huge dream come true for a lot of Marvel gaming fans out there, and I think you and I in particular are super pumped to see what that could mean in terms of progressing the game further with its technology. Of course, visually, it's going to look incredible, for sure. I mean, the character models, even though I've already said my piece with how Peter Parker looks in the Marvel Spider-Man remaster, graphically, he looks incredible. Graphically, everyone within the remaster on Marvel Spider-Man looks beautiful, and same thing with Miles Morales in that game on the PS5 looks insane, almost one-to-one realistic, as well as the city of New York itself looks drop-dead gorgeous. Even after having been to New York myself, I can promise you that the buildings almost look one-to-one identical to how it looks in real life, even though it's shorter in the game versus in reality. But the detail of the characters and the cinematics are going to be there. But mainly what I'm the most excited about is not just the fast loading with the SSD being seamless, transitioning from gameplay to cinematics, which is likely going to happen, but mainly the DualSense controller and how you feel. I promise you that if they don't have a feature where you feel the claws pop out every time that he goes into a fight in the DualSense, it gets an instant 0 out of 10 from me. That is unacceptable, because that is going to be a huge drawing factor as to how immersive the combat and how intense those encounters are going to be with not just villains like normal enemies and grunts, but also boss fights with classic characters from Wolverine's comic history. And of course, those encounters when you're going to be like probably like bashing through certain like areas when fighting enemies. You're gonna feel every single bit of impact with those battles into the DualSense controller and make it feel like you are Wolverine, the classic cliche trope. Makes you feel like Spider-Man, makes you feel like Miles Morales, the exaggerated swagger of a black teen. You gotta get that exaggerated swagger of an adamantium bone mutant, alright? You gotta get that in this game for sure, and I think that having the ability to fully rely on the tech of the PS5, in my opinion, for me right now in 2021, my game of the year is a PS5 exclusive, Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart. It's a wonderful game, and it's like the first glimpse of what the PS5 can truly do for a game that's super early into this brand new generation. So knowing that probably, as of right now, it's going to be 3 to 4 years down the line until Wolverine comes out, and we'll already be like in the middle-ish cycle of the PS5 and Xbox Series X lifespans, who knows how much of an improvement that they can do and incorporate within these games with the power of the fidelity and just the graphical capabilities and just tech and gameplay possibilities in general that they can all fluidly incorporate into this incredible Marvel character.
Yeah, no, I mean, when you look at where we're at now, and you look at really, you can look, if you want to keep it Sony specific, you want to look at The Last of Us for the PS3. I mean, ridiculous what Naughty Dog was able to do on that. Even actually twice. Last was Part 2, for as many problems as I do think it has. Mechanically, visually, not one of them. It doesn't look like a PS4 game. It looks like maybe a PS6 game. So it's insane what companies have been able to do. And yeah, that stuff, honestly, it's all important. And I'm not saying like any of what you said is like mute and shouldn't be important, but like I don't even think of those things just because I guess I'm just banking on them just happening. You know what I mean? Where it's like you said, actually, if it doesn't happen, it's a severe problem. I mean, even if you want to go 2024, which I think is fair, that is, I'd say actually it's more than half, because the console generation I think will only be around 7 years. It could be the last like 2 years of the PS5, which is stupid to think about and ridiculous to think about. But anyway, that's where you're going to get just some killer things. The DualSense, everybody should have figured it out by then. Everybody should do it right now, but they're not. But I think by then, Insomniac, all of the first-party studios should be using them. And then visually, yeah, I mean, it's going to be pushing. I mean, they're still figuring it out, just like they figure out every single console. And you see it really at that halfway point and past the halfway point, you start to see these games just take full advantage of what these consoles can do. And I wish it happened faster. I think it would happen faster if you stopped doing it on last gen, but that's an issue that I've had and has gotten me in trouble. But it's something that I think you could say you take it for granted, or you just expect it. And that's what I do. I just expect 2024, 2025, visually, it should probably look like it belongs on the console that comes next. DualSense should be there. It should push the console as far as it should go. It would never work on the PS. Like, these are all things we should be saying. I mean, it would never work on PS4, all those things. And again, I just think based off of what we've seen so far, even Insomniac, Demon Souls, Returnal. I guess Ratchet and Clank is Insomniac, but not that team. They've done it, so far so good, basically. So I think visually, performance-wise, it's something I don't even think about because I just kind of bank on it being perfect. And not to be, and this isn't anti any console, because actually it should be this way for all of them. If you're making an exclusive just for one platform, you better be giving it your A game. You know what I mean? I would expect the same thing for Avowed or Everwild or whatever for Xbox. Like when these games come out, you're only working on one. You have all of the resources of the company. You need to make it like top tier. And so you think of that and you think 2024, 2025, it should be some of the best the PS5 has to offer, because the PS6 is probably a year or two away.
And I think just in general, knowing how well Insomniac have already done with pretty much carrying the PS5's beginning years of Marvel Spider-Man Remastered, Marvel Spider-Man Miles Morales being a cross-gen game, but as a highlight on the PS5, and a pure PS5 exclusive from the ground up with Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart. They've already proven what they can do at the very start of the PS5's life cycle. So knowing that they're going to be honing all those skills, taking in everything that they've learned from their previous games, not just on the current generation era of the PS5, but also in the past with all their other titles, and pouring their absolute heart and soul into a character like Logan just gets me even more excited for what the possibilities of this game could be. And I think it's safe to say that both Alex and I cannot wait until this game releases. So with all that said, everyone, thank you all so much for watching. Be sure to leave a like on the video if you did enjoy, and definitely be sure to go follow and support and subscribe to the One Only Podcast now as soon as you can. He definitely deserves all your support, and I am very honored that he was able to actually join me for today's discussion. So, dude, thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks so much for having me, buddy. I really appreciate it.
Until next time, true believers, thank you all so much for watching. Stay uncanny, X-Men fans, and without further ado, peace out.